Good evening, everyone. The time is now 6:11, and we're going to go ahead and get the Planning Commission started this evening. Just as a reminder to our commissioners, when it is your time to speak, just make sure that you unmute your microphone to be heard on the broadcast. The public who did not register in advance can watch this streaming service tonight on the city's YouTube channel. And for live Spanish translation services, please dial 720-386-9023 and use code 104091 for Spanish translation services.
I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Will staff please do a roll call?
Commissioner Nelson.
Present.
Commissioner Van Heusen.
Present.
Commissioner Biltoff.
Present.
Commissioner Schechter.
Present.
Commissioner Eggleston.
Present.
Chair, you have a quorum?
Thank you. Would everybody please join me or stand with me and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Can I please have a motion to approve the March 4th meeting minutes?
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Schechter and a second by Commissioner Eggleston. Please open electronic voting. The motion passes 5 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstain. The first case of the evening is Z24-0006. I will open the public hearing for this case and ask Senior Planner Dalton Guerra to please announce this case.
Case number Z24-0006. Matheson Holdings is requesting approval of a zone change from R2, Single Family Attached Residential District, to I2, Medium Intensity Industrial District. The subject properties total approximately 1.4 acres and are located at 6925 and 6981 East 54th Place.
Point of order.
Yes.
I just noticed on the vote, it had David Sanchez's name as voting. I don't know, would there be a way to correct that? Just to preserve the record. Sorry for the interruption.
Yes, there is. Let's redo that and give me just a moment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schechter.
Sure.
All right, we're ready for a vote again. Should we redo the order? Okay, we can redo the vote. I will open that back up for everyone.
Once again, the motion passes 5 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstain.
Thank you for catching that.
Once again to Senior Planner Dalton Guerra.
Okay. Case number Z24-0006. Matheson Holdings is requesting approval of a zone change from R2 Single Family Attached Residential District to I2 Medium Intensity Industrial District. The subject properties total approximately 1.4 acres and are located at 6925 and 6981 East 54th Place.
At this time, I will ask the applicant to come forward to address the commission with the staff presentation to follow.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to allow.
I'm sorry if I can interrupt you for one moment. If you could state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Jennifer Grant. My address is 1605 Quebec Street, Denver, Colorado.
Thank you.
May I present?
Yes.
I want to thank the Commissioners for the opportunity to present our application for zoning for these properties to you. I'd like to introduce you to myself. My name is Jennifer Grant, and I'm Principal Architect with Quintessence Design Group. I'm joined today by PJ Danahy, who is the owner of Danahy Development Advisors, and today we're representing Matheson Holdings, which is a national company that's headquartered in Sacramento, California, with properties in Denver, Colorado. We've been working with your staff team, Heather, Dalton, and Jeff, on this application process, and they've been instrumental in guiding us through understanding Commerce City's needs and desires for any development that occurs within the jurisdiction. And so I'll quickly go through our slides, and if you guys have any questions, please feel free to interrupt us and ask them. Let me see if I can work this here. The property is located on East 54th Place, kind of in the middle on the north side of the street. And the request at hand is to rezone our property from R2 single-family attached zoning designation to I2 medium industrial. And you can see on the lower left-hand portion of this slide, the zoning map south of 72nd Street for Commerce City is done in 2024. I've enlarged our section kind of surrounding our site. And you can see that our site is surrounded by a small pink rectangle, the yellow site, and all the properties surrounding it are currently zoned I2 medium industrial. And our intention is to rezone our little residential sites to match the surrounding district to I2 medium industrial. You can see there are no sites adjacent to our property that are residential in nature. And if we drill down into the GIS data for Commerce City that's located on the publicly available property websites, we can see that the currently entitled zoning is for residential medium, and the jurisdiction's desired future designation is for industrial/distribution. So we feel that our rezoning application supports the desired future use that's published by the jurisdiction. This is the site that you can see encircled by the pink rectangle. The site is actually 2 lots, and the intention is to, upon approval, replat the 2 lots into one so that we meet the minimum square footage requirements to be designated as I2 medium industrial. And you can see the building kind of on the left-hand side of the site. It's to our west. That's also owned by the same owner, and it's already zoned I2 medium industrial. The use of that site is a service garage. We don't intend to change the zoning or the use of that property. We just intend for the adjacent property that's owned by the same user to be elevated so that its use can support the existing business operations of that existing building. One other thing I want to draw your attention to on this site is that the site to our east, which is kind of in the right-hand corner of the slide, has recently undergone a similar operation, and you can see the storm drainage retention basin and the screening that they've incorporated onto their site. And I'm going to talk about some of the features that we're proposing as upgrades to our site that are very similar to these, which have already been approved by the jurisdiction and constructed. This is the site plan, and the two lots in the center on the north of 54th Place are, again, owned by the same ownership. The building on the left-hand side of the site, we don't want to change that use or the zoning. We only want to change the use and the zoning on kind of the shaded in portion. So I'm going to zoom into that section to give a little bit more detail. What we're proposing here is that we would, as you saw back in the previous image, the site, there's a lot of dirt on the site. It's kind of, there are areas of the site that have some gravel, but there's a little bit of dirt on the site. And so we'd like to mitigate some of that existing dust, trespass, and pollution that exits the site in high wind events. And our proposal is to refinish the site. We haven't come to the final details of what that would be, but we're definitely intending to refinish the site to mitigate some of that dust trespass that occurs on the site. And you can see that we've been working with the fire department to incorporate circulation throughout the site that would allow for the support of an 85,000-pound fire truck. And they've let us know where they want that circulation to be placed, and so we've been working with them on that. In addition, the fencing that occurs right now on the site is all the way up against the sidewalk. So we would set that fencing back so that we can incorporate some storm drainage features on the front of the site, and also allow for, there's a necessary setback for a fire truck to pull in to a site, and so that's part of that setback requirement. And then there would be some screening fencing there that would obscure any visibility into the site from the street. And then as a request of the city, the city has requested that we replace the existing sidewalk and curb cuts, which are outside of our property line. They're in the right-of-way, but we would replace that as a portion of this project. Now, when we've been discussing this project with several departments in the city, and the engineering department had a lot of concerns about how we would handle grading and storm drainage on the site. And we've worked with them to develop a plan that grades the site from the northeast corner to the southwest corner so that it's sloping from northeast to southwest and drains to the southwest corner. And then we incorporate a large-scale detention pond at the south corner, or the south edge of the site. It's a full spectrum detention pond with an outlet structure that connects that storm drainage directly to the municipal system. And incidentally, that pond, as it is designed, would have enough width and area and depth to accommodate any sort of impervious nature, whether it's, recycled asphalt road base, or whether it's concrete or asphalt, determined by the development plan that gets approved with the city. And if we look at the utility plan, we see that structure that's connecting directly to the municipal system. Now I'm going to zoom into this pond area and show you that our intention is to landscape surrounding the pond area. And so if you look at the diagram on the top of the slide, we're showing 3 ornamental trees that would be directly adjacent to the sidewalk, and then 3 deciduous trees that would be directly adjacent to the fence that's behind the pond. And then in the corners, we'd have evergreen trees, and then scattered throughout would be a distribution of Colorado appropriate shrubs and grasses. And all of this would be irrigated with a drip irrigation system that would surround that area around the pond. And then within the center of the pond, we would have some spray head irrigation to help get that native grass that would be inside of the pond growing and established. These are our planting materials that we're proposing. So I mentioned 3 ornamental trees that would be fronting the sidewalk, directly adjacent to the sidewalk. Those would be spring snow crabapple trees that grow to a height of about 15 feet and a width of about 15 feet. I think you have one in front of your building here. Anyway, in the spring, they have beautiful white blossoms. They're very beautiful trees. And then along the fence line, we would have columnar Norway maple trees. And you can see that the columnar Norway maple tree is a very tall, slender tree. And the reason that we selected that tree species is because the jurisdiction wishes you to incorporate deciduous trees along the street frontage, but we actually have overhead power lines directly adjacent to the front of the sidewalk. And so we wanted to select a tree species that at its full growth wouldn't ever grow into the power lines or disrupt the power lines in any way, which are owned by the utility that we don't have any control over. And then on the east and west corners of the site, we would have clusters of Chinese junipers. They're very, very hardy in Colorado, very drought tolerant, and they would provide winter interest. And then along the front edge near the sidewalk, we would have clusters of show-off sugar baby forsythia bushes, which bloom a beautiful yellow color. And they would be interspersed with Carl Forester featherweed grasses, which are very hardy in Colorado. And then along the back edge at the fence line, we would have larger shrubs, which are Persian lilacs, and they have beautiful purple blossoms during the growth season. The finish for the fencing material would be wood panels. The wood panels would be finished with a opaque glaze. It's an opaque glaze by Olympic, by PPG. It's a paint company. It's very durable material, and the wood panels would be attached to steel posts on concrete footings, and the gate itself would be, it's called a cantilever gate, but it basically slides back and forth rather than swinging open and out, and it's on casters. Now, regarding the business operations, Matheson Holdings is a logistics company, and they specialize in mail hauling, sorting, and distribution. They're, again, based in Sacramento, California, and when they have their operations in the existing building, they employ 8 people between the hours of 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So we've been asked to discuss the approval criteria for the site. I know Dalton's going to cover some of this as well. Sorry, I can't read that far, so I'm going to read my notes here. I'm going to read, the white lines are taken from your municipal code, and the purple lines are our answers to those approval criteria. So these are what are required to be approved for a rezone in this jurisdiction. The city says, the zone change corrects a technical mistake on the part of the city in classifying a parcel within a specific district. Our answer to that is that we do not believe a technical mistake is apparent, but our proposed plan supports the city's desired future land use. The city says, or the zone change meets all of the following. Number 1, the proposed zone district and allowed uses are consistent with the policies and goals of the comprehensive plan, any applicable adopted area plan or community plan of the city. Now, we've looked at the 2025 Commerce City Comprehensive Plan, Chapter 5, character areas, and we're already located in a character area that allows industrial districts, so we believe that we already comply there. The city says, the proposed zone district and allowed uses are compatible with proposed development, surrounding land uses, and the natural environment. So our proposed use of industrial outdoor storage is allowable by right under I-2 Medium Industrial Zoning Code pursuant to community development approval and industrial outdoor storage design regulations as reflected, and we believe that are already reflected in our design that we've worked with the staff on. Regarding the surrounding land uses, they're already all I-2 zoning designations, so to rezone them would make our site compatible. And regarding the natural area, we believe that our proposed sidewalk replacement, storm drainage, and landscape features will be a functional and aesthetic improvement to the existing condition at the right-of-way. Moving on. The city says, the proposed zone district will have or future development can provide efficient and adequate provision of public services, including but not limited to water, sewerage, streets, and drainage. Regarding water, new streets, and sewerage, we're not currently proposing this for our site, but future development could provide these utility services, and our proposed storm drainage shall improve the existing stormwater runoff conditions at the perimeter of the site. The city says, the proposed zone district will have, or future development can provide, efficient and adequate provision of public uses, including but not limited to parks, schools, and open space. Now, there are parks, schools, and open space in the neighborhood. We're not proposing any of that for our current proposal, but future development could provide that if ever it were appropriate. The city says, there is a community need for the zoning district in the proposed location given to provide or maintain a proper mix of uses within the city and the immediate area of the proposed use. We again cite Chapter 5 of the Commerce City Comprehensive Plan, our character area, which we already comply with. The city says, the area for which zone change is requested has changed or is changing to such a degree that is in the public interest to allow a new use or density. Our answer is, all of the surrounding uses in the proposed area are currently zoned as I-2, and rezoning the sites to I-2 will support the evolution of the district as it has historically evolved and as the city prefers it to evolve to meet the future jurisdictional needs. We've come to the end of our presentation today, our section of the presentation, and I don't know if Dalton presents first, but we're happy to answer questions if you have them.
We'll ask Mr. Guerra to do his presentation, and we'll hold our questions for the end. So, yeah, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, commissioners.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Dalton Guerra. I'm a senior planner with the Commerce City Planning Division. The case before you is Z24-0006 for a zone change from R2 to I2, as the applicant has explained in their presentation. It's about 1.4 acres. It's in the Fusion District, South Rose Hill character area, which does call for primary land uses of industrial. There's also concurrent final plat, consolidation plat to consolidate the two lots into one, and a development plan for the site-specific details. Here's a look at the zoning. You can see the two properties are existing as two separate properties, both zoned R2. And so the proposal is to change the color of those from yellow to purple to match the surrounding properties of I2, and then also the concurrent application for a consolidation plat to turn them into one lot. It's currently vacant. And as mentioned in the South Rose Hill Fusion District character area in the 2045 comprehensive plan. Staff did receive one letter of public comment with concerns about the zoning of I2 for outdoor storage without a building, the surfacing to reduce dust being blown around in the wind to adjacent properties, having adequate on-site drainage, and buffering to neighboring properties. And the applicant has already kind of addressed how these will be mitigated with the development plan that's still under review with staff. With the improved surfacing on site, the on-site drainage pond, and the screening and the landscaping that will provide a buffer to the right-of-way. And to address the zoning concern, outdoor storage is allowed within I2, and so the request at hand is for I2 zoning, which would allow for outdoor storage in conjunction with the principal use and the principal building to the west that's under the same ownership. This project was reviewed by all the relevant development review team agencies. There's one singular access point off of East 54th Place. The applicant provided a traffic impact study that estimated about 3 daily trips. They will be providing adequate on-site detention. And as mentioned, the development plan that's still under review would include improvements to the surfacing, screening, and the landscaping on site. Some considerations, the I2 zoning district is compatible with our 2045 comprehensive plan. This zone change would allow the site to develop with an accessory outdoor storage use, which is consistent with the surrounding properties in the neighborhood. A lot of the existing uses out in that neighborhood are I-2 industrial with outdoor storage on site. And allowing the development of this property would bring it into compliance with our LDC, and it would have to conform with all of our outdoor storage requirements, which does include landscaping, surfacing, and screening. So staff does recommend approval of the zone change from R2 to I2 for these properties located at 6925 and 6981 East 54th Place. This is a list of the approval criteria. These were analyzed in the staff report, but I'm happy to go over any of these if upon request. And with that, staff is also available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners for either the applicant or for staff? Commissioner Engelson?
So are they going to be building a building on that property?
No, there is no proposed building for this subject site.
So it's just going to be the lot?
It will just be for outdoor storage, correct?
Okay.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Van Huzen?
Is there a requirement for certain, rather than the front landscaping, of a tree canopy of any sort or other in a outdoor storage capacity? Is there anything that would require like site trees at the backside of such a large expanse, or does LDC address that currently?
Yeah, there are minimum landscape requirements, but in this case with the detention pond, those minimum requirements just require a number of trees and shrubs within the detention pond itself.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any additional questions? Seeing none. Do any members of the public wish to provide comments in this case?
We had,
Seeing none. Is there anyone attending virtually tonight who wishes to speak?
we did not have anyone sign up beforehand.
All right. At this time, I will now close the public hearing for this case. Is there any additional discussion from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Engelson?
I know this property well because it's right by my office, and there's no residential down in that area except for the 3 lots that they've shown, and I don't think there's any residential on Newport. It's all businesses. So I think that zoning those 2 lots into I-2 along with the whole surrounding area makes sense, and I would be to approve it.
Thank you, Commissioner Engelson. Anything else you'd like to add? Thank you. Any other points of discussion? Commissioner Van Huzen.
Thank you. I really hate to do anything that's going to take away from housing opportunities. However, I don't think this site is one of the appropriate areas where housing would be appropriate. And so I'm inclined to think that at least getting tree canopies and getting landscaping and new sidewalks for that area is a real good trade-off, because residential is obviously not the correct use for this site at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner Van Huzen. Any other points of discussion? Seeing none, can we please have a motion on this case?
I move that the Planning Commission enter a finding that the requested I-2 medium-intensity industrial district zoning for the property located at 6925 and 6981 East 54th Place, contained in case Z24 20-0006 meets the criteria of the Land Development Code, and based upon such finding, recommend that the City Council approve the I-2 Medium Intensity Industrial District zoning.
I second.
Is there any additional discussion on the motion? Seeing none, can we please open electronic voting on the case? The motion passes, 5 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstain. I'd like to congratulate Ms. Grant and Mr. Donahue and the applicant on the their successful presentation. As that is the last case for the evening, is there any commission business to discuss at this time?
Commissioner, may I add that
Yes.
the city council date for this specific zoning case would be May 5th, 2025, for anybody in the audience listening or for your education as well.
Oh, yes, sorry to cut you off. Thank you very much. All right. Moving back to, is there any commission business to discuss at this time? I only have one point to bring up, something I noticed on the city development website, specifically under the PUDs as they're noted, that I don't know if some of the contacts that are noted are still with the city and if those are correct. It's on the, it was the.
Which website page? Did you say PUD?
The PUDs where there's, I think, like 5 or 6 cases of note. It's the big, let me see.
I was going to say, Commissioner Biltoff, if you want to email me the link that you're on, I'll make sure that
Sure.
we get it updated
Sure.
for you.
And just for record, I'll email staff. Is there any other commission business? Seeing none. Is there any attorney business to discuss at this time?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Is there any staff business to discuss at this time?
No, and we have no updates from council. We gave the update at your last meeting, and they haven't had any agenda items since then.
Thank you. The time is now 6:44, and this meeting is adjourned.
Causing too much tech disturbance to move rooms.
Okay, you need to sign in to the
Our
meeting.
tech is very fragile. Thank you for understanding.
Whatever you want to do.
Sorry, I misspoke. It's the subdivision cases.
The subdivisions? Okay, okay. And it has a bunch of old staff.
It still notes Jennifer as one of the primary contacts. for
Oh,
the union,
okay.
So it's on the primary contact,
Oh, wow.
but I don't believe some
Okay,
of the staff is still there.
okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate it.
It's hard to, I moved recently and I still haven't updated my address everywhere. It's hard to remember all the spots that.
Well, I was going to say, our plan, there's no can't go to community development and everything. It's all
Yeah. Yeah. But if you want to talk to them tonight about finding time for me to do an updated quasi judicial.
Do you want to do that? I thought you said you thought the orientation you gave them was sufficient.
We gave them an orientation, but
Uh-huh.
I'm sure it's a lot of information when you're starting out, and it might, we're happy to give it anytime.
Okay.
It's something that Lee has done for council many times as well, but
Yeah.
we'll do it again.
Yeah, no. Well, you could have said that during
Did everyone hear about Cory Booker breaking the filibuster record? He spoke for over 25 hours. He what? Yeah, yeah. I saw him wiping his face with his, yeah. It was a 68-year-old record that he broke. So,
Not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah.
not here to comment on that part, but I think it's neat that a record was broken.
I saw that like the previous two records, the legislation passed in both cases regardless, so what do we, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just always think it's kind of cool when a record is broken.
true.
Do you need these? Close these out on it, because the Zoom thing is a very complex and takes up a lot of memory. So I'm thinking that is causing problems.
Yeah, maybe try closing Outlook, whatever you can.
Anything you don't need.
Are we ready to go? All right, we're ready to get started here. Before they start their presentation, I just wanted to mention they've been doing a lot of the land use trainings with city council on a lot of the same stuff that they talked about with you. And then at the same time, my office has been going over quasi-judicial operations with city council. And I know most of you, we talked about that with you in your orientation when you joined, but I think it sounds like they did a longer presentation for those trainings. And so I wanted to offer y'all an opportunity to talk about that again, if anyone feels like they want to go over it, and to talk about it longer than what we may have done for your particular orientation. So it would be not land use code, but quasi-judicial operations and more of the like stuff about the meetings and procedure. We don't have a study session set for May 6th right now. So if that's something you're interested in, that's an open night that we could add a study session to. You don't have to have it. been talking about it a lot, but I wanted to offer it to you.
I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads, so I think we agree. I think that would be a good use of our time on the 6th.
Okay. And I'd say if you've had some questions brewing that we haven't already talked about, please feel free to prepare them for that night. Okay. LDC stuff.
Yeah, great. Hi, Planning Commission. My name is Sung Han, Principal Long Range Planner with the city, and I'll be presenting here tonight. So really for the purposes of today's study session, we wanted to review the comprehensive plan guidance, but specifically help connect the dots between how the comprehensive plan guidance is impacting the land development code update from the perspective of implementation. So to do that, we prepared 3 kind of core agenda items for tonight. One is a quick overview of the comprehensive plan guidance that is driving the update and informing the update. Second is within the comp plan, there are key kind of character and framework areas that have been helping guide our decision-making on the land development code update, and also helps inform a lot of the rezoning decisions that staff is going before you. So we just wanted to at least kind of connect those dots a little bit more clearly so that once you guys see the land development code, it has, this kind of gives you more context and background as you continue to review. And so for the third one is really just, again, kind of doing an overview of the zone districts and development standards, which will be found in Article 2 of the code, and just, again, kind of illustrating how those connections are being made. So just, again, a little bit about the comprehensive plan that was adopted towards the end of last year. For the city, it provides the overall vision and core principles to help guide decision-making for elected officials and for city staff. And really a key component of that vision is how the city grows and develops over time. So within the comp plan, that is mostly guided by the character areas and the residential and economic development framework. And so these areas really help illustrate and describe the different character and the feel and look of the place throughout different areas of the city. And so it really helps illustrate, again, from a zoning perspective about the different character, form, and function that we want to encourage. And so there are policies outside the character and framework areas that have informed the updates to the land development code. So if you read through the document closely, there's specific policies about environmental stewardship, promoting better urban design, increasing housing options that aren't necessarily captured in just those framework areas, but it's a kind of a higher level policy that's found in the comprehensive plan, but something that we still consider as we update the land development code. And so here are the character areas that are found in the comp plan. And so I'll use the next few slides just kind of providing an overview of what these character areas are and kind of their definition found in the comp plan. And I'll just say tonight that I don't have any placeholder slides to stop for discussion. So if there are questions that come up just to get additional clarity from us, feel free to interrupt us and let us know. So for really the 3 character areas here, I've color coordinated the font and the color on the map to better connect them together. So number 1 is the 270 industrial district. So that is the most established and kind of most impactful industrial uses that we have in the city. So think about tenants like Suncor. So idea in the comp plan is to contain those industrial uses to the existing boundaries that are found in the plan, and also to provide the adequate buffering to adjacent land uses. And in the character area itself, it also talks about incorporating other uses along the edges, potentially light industrial uses, to serve as a better transition and buffer along those edges. For the Community Connection District, that is focused on providing a range of housing options, including townhomes and multifamily, and it's within close proximity to commercial uses and services at key intersections. So really think about 72nd and Colorado, the station area, and the Mile High Greyhound Park redevelopment as kind of a recent, maybe the recent type of developments that's been going on in that area that the plan would want to continue to support in the future. So really opportunities for mixed use and active environments there. And the third is the Stadium District, really just encouraging development that can support a 24/7 neighborhood that can complement the Dick's Sporting Goods Park and the Rocky Mountain Arsenal. And really this is intended to be a mixed-use destination that has a regional draw across the city and across the Denver metro area. And moving on to 4 is the central neighborhoods. So again, the core neighborhoods of the city here. And the plan really talks about reinvestment in infrastructure. So right now, the city is going through a process of thinking through potential improvements along 64th Avenue. So think about the safety improvements so that residents are able to get to and from their neighborhood in a safe way. And then also increasing housing choice, providing more housing opportunity and types in the neighborhood. And then moving on to the future Fusion District is about reinvestment and encouraging light industrial uses that are less impactful in those areas. And so there is a distinction that's made between Irondale to the north in 5A and Rose Hill to 5B. And I believe the Irondale is following the direction from the neighborhood plan where it recommends transitioning residential uses away to industrial, and then a portion of Rose Hill where it is primarily residential today to transition industrial out of those residential neighborhoods. And then for the South Platte District, that's really focused on the preservation of open space near the South Platte and also maintaining a lot of the utility services that already exist in those areas. So think about the water treatment facilities, maybe some of the electrical substations that exist out there today. And then we have the Northern Business District. That is to promote a wide variety of commercial service, light industrial, and business park uses. So this district is often associated with a lot of outdoor storage and activities that are buffered and, from nearby residential and commercial areas. So it's really, the comp plan talks about how it really plays a strong role in this city's economic base. And then moving further north is the establishment of the northern neighborhoods. So that's recognizing that, you know, as ongoing development happens in the greenfield areas, that a mix of housing options and really strong urban design is considered with trail connectivity and access to nearby commercial services along the major arterials such as 104th and Chambers. And then for E470 is imagined to be the city's most intense residential and commercial office development that encourages high quality design, and then also kind of manufacturing and distributing uses that are tied to those campus offices. And then this is the last slide for just the character areas, and maybe I'll pause to see if there's any clarification questions that I can answer. Is 10 is the Denver Gateway District. This is meant to be utilized as location and proximity to the airport to encourage light industrial, warehousing, distribution, but also commercial and retail that could benefit from its proximity to the airport. Number 11 is the Innovation District. So really this is meant to have a long-term investment in technology and research for the city. So a space for maybe science and technology companies and their associated land use such as research labs, office, flex spaces, and light industrial. And 12 is North Airport District. I think the plan acknowledges that even with the Denver Gateway Innovation District alone, that is a lot of growth opportunity. So just kind of leaving that for the time being and reconsidering that in the future. And so again, these character areas represent the placemaking, the type of place we want to create. And obviously zoning isn't the only tool to implement that, right? There are other programs that we would have to work with economic development on to actually create the places we desire. But really, a land development code does have a significant part in that in terms of controlling the use, the form, and function of the area. And so before I move on, I'm happy to answer questions, so I'm not, speaking for too long or answering questions on the spot, but I'm happy to continue to move forward if there aren't any clarifying questions as well. Great. I'm sure you guys know the comp plan like the back of your hand here, so fun read, right? So yes. Oh, yes, 13, was there a 13? Sorry. Oh, yeah, I think the 13 is acknowledging it as a growth area, but there isn't a lot of guidance from a future land use perspective so. It's within the growth area, but is not within city limits. So I believe the city limits kind of jogs around E470 in the red, but all the kind of light blue and dark blue to the east is not within city limits right now. Yeah, everything outside of the city limits within the growth boundary would require annexation.
So the first page, I think we had section 15 on the south side. First slide.
Oh, right, yeah. Yep. Yes, I think that's just Adams County unincorporated, correct? No. Yeah, no, yes, that should be unincorporated Adams County land. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the framework areas. So again, the character areas set the high level vision of the placemaking of the areas. But in addition to the character areas, there are what we call framework areas within the comp plans that overlap and provide a finer grain and level of detail that the character areas might not provide. So an example of that is the residential areas framework and economic development framework. The residential areas framework is really more specific on the direction on the type of housing and growth that should be considered from a residential and housing perspective. And for economic development is similar. It's more specific on the mix of commercial uses and employment activities that should be encouraged in those areas. And so I pulled out not necessarily all, but maybe some of the key components of those framework areas that I wanted to at least highlight for you today. The first within the residential areas and framework is the infill and redevelopment, and that is in close association with the central neighborhoods. So really what the plan is recognizing that, if there were to be any future growth and development happening in the central neighborhoods, it would happen in the form of infill and redevelopment. So think about maybe an empty lot getting developed on, or an existing home being scraped and replaced with a new home. So in light of that, the plan really calls for increasing housing options to increase the mix of housing supply in that neighborhood. The second is transit-oriented development. And so that is, I believe, the dark orange on the residential areas framework map, and highlighting the higher intensity development potential that may exist around 72nd in Colorado. And the third is the higher density residential, which is highlighted in the red in the top map right there. And that is in close association with the Community Connection District, again, talking about the increasing of housing choice, particularly multifamily. And that, I believe, was recommended to be kind of surrounding the Mile High Derby redevelopment already. And then the fourth is to maintain and preserve. That's recognizing that a lot of the newer residential development north of town is fairly recent and established and wouldn't change fairly much. And really the focus is, again, about reinvestment and making sure the connectivity and infrastructure is there to better serve residents in the future. And then the fifth bullet is greenfield redevelopment or greenfield development. So it's, again, recognizing that there is a lot of development potential to the north. And as that development continues, that we really want to push on the comp plan goals of having better urban design outcomes, better housing options, and to be able to preserve commercial uses and services that can better serve the neighborhoods to the north. And so with the economic development framework, again, the focus is around commercial and the mix of commercial. There are 4 different categories. The first is mixed commercial. So you'll see kind of to the north, there are orange parcels highlighted at key intersections. The mixed commercial is the yellow parcels that are highlighted along the corridors in the northern neighborhoods. So that's acknowledging that higher density multifamily and commercial is encouraged along those arterials. The North Range commercial are the orange parcels that are highlighted at the key intersections. So those, the North Range commercial is talking about making sure that the commercial uses are preserved and prioritized in those areas, but not necessarily only that, but to make sure that the building and site design is encouraged in a way that it really serves as a gathering place for the community. And the third is commercial reinvestment. So you'll see a lot of the red highlighted in the central neighborhoods. And that's talking about a lot of the existing commercial building and infrastructure that's there and could deserve kind of further reinvestment. And the fourth is regional commercial. There are kind of the dark reds that are highlighted, I guess, particularly along E470. And that's just kind of pointing to the fact that these are an opportunity to have more regional drawing kind of commercial uses. So maybe think about commercial tenants and uses that have a larger impact from maybe a parking perspective, the scale of the buildings, such as maybe an amphitheater or stadium, something of that nature. And so really, when we start layering these character and framework areas together, they help provide the foundation for updating the land development code, again, to promote the kind of the character and place that the comp plan calls for. And that's addressed kind of throughout the land development code, but one really specific section that it really is honed and captured within is the Article 2 again, which is the zoning and development standards, zoning district and development standards. And 3 key components that I wanted to kind of discuss and provide a brief overview on is with the development options, zoning districts, and building forms. So for the next few slides, I'll just kind of define what those 3 tools are and a little bit of an example of how we plan on using it as part of this new code update. So again, by layering all these different character and framework areas together, they also help paint a clear picture in terms of the form and design we want to encourage. And through our land development code, again, particularly with the zoning and development standards, we're able to provide the regulatory tools to help control the urban form and design at different scales of development. So including the neighborhood scale, thinking about kind of multiple blocks and multiple larger groups of neighborhoods. That's addressed through what we're calling the development options, and at a block scale, zoning districts. So that's something you guys are probably more familiar with in terms of the establishment of residential and commercial zoning that we have already in place today. And the third is at the lot scale. And what we're calling the building forms. And that isn't a tool that we have in place today, but it's been a best practice that other cities have used recently. So again, in the following slides, we'll look through those specific regulatory tools, define it a little bit more, and look at examples of how they may be used. So for, again, at the highest level of kind of thinking about development at the scale of this kind of neighborhood scale, is what we're calling the development option. The development option provides a framework to better tailor our specific design and development regulations that reflect both existing but also the desired characters that are unique to certain parts of the city. So again, this isn't used in our current code today, but it is something that other cities use to better contextualize the standards that are found in the land development code. So one example being here is residential. So the three development options that we have for residential is central neighborhoods, northern neighborhoods, and neighborhood village. So if we look at the residential areas today, the city's land development code only has one R1 single family zoning. But we know that the form, the design of R1 zoning or our single family neighborhoods look very different depending on where you are in different parts of town. So by having these development options, it helps better tailor the R1 standards in a way that kind of meets and advances the form and character we want in a neighborhood. So just to provide an example of just maybe photo examples of each of these potential development options and the differences that I wanted to point out is the central neighborhood, right? So in any given block in the central neighborhoods, you see that, you know, especially kind of how we treat off-street parking, its location, it's different, right? So if we look at the central neighborhoods, the image on the top left corner, you see that the parking is significantly set back from the street. It's behind the primary building of the home itself. And then on the top right, just the home directly next to it is an attached parking garage that's on the side of the home. And then on the bottom right, that's a corner lot, and you see that the home is loaded from the side, and there isn't a garage presence from the front. So, you know, if you walk out today, you just see a lot of variation in terms of just how parking is managed and designed along each of the blocks. But if we now transition looking at the neighborhoods to the north, you know, it's different, right, in terms of how we treat the on-street parking. Most of the parking, and I acknowledge that some of the parking garages are side-oriented, but this is just a photo example of one block from Reunion, is that the parking is more forward-facing. Sometimes sits flush with the primary facade of the building. Sometimes it's even more forward than the primary entrance of the building. And it's a repeated pattern and doesn't have that kind of diversity that we just saw from the first photo example here. Yeah.
I actually have a question about this exact thing here.
Yeah.
Not so much at the meta level.
Yeah.
That to me, like, I've heard this called snout houses. I'll just know that term. Like, some neighborhoods where when you walk down the street, all you see is a garage. Like the one up on the left. And you don't really see your front porch much anymore. And so, I'm just wondering, what is the current conventional wisdom, or like where we're at, what kind of, you know, driveway can be like or not? I feel like I was really lucky in Reunion. I got one of those houses. It does not have driveway in the front. It has a traditional alley going through the back.
Yeah.
And so we have this kind of like old-fashioned front porch thing, where people walk down the sidewalk. It encourages community. At least that's my theory. Where are we at as like a society?
Yeah, I would say based on the guidance of the comp plan, it's probably looking towards the third example that I'll provide, where it is, I guess from an urban design perspective, we are being more careful in terms of how we treat the street frontage, right? So that the street frontage isn't so car-oriented, but more people-oriented, where it is about front porch, maybe actually having the windows and the front of the home be more prominent than just a blank garage wall. And so I would say based on my interpretation of the comp plan, and really its focus on, I believe, what's called the residential village concept that's kind of mentioned throughout, is really focusing on that. And so really, you know, I think Bell Creek is one example, and that's the next slide I have here, that I think that the comp plan is aspiring more towards.
You know, like a lot of, I mean, I realize this is before your time. I wonder if a lot of extra work had to happen to allow the union to have like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, reunion, is that a PUD?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a home builder decision.
Yeah, so it was a home builder decision, and I think the PUD probably just reflects what the developer had envisioned for that area. Yeah, and so again, this is a picture of Reunion,
Creek.
or sorry, Bell Creek. And these are, again, the type of alley-loaded homes that you're talking about. And it's not necessarily even just the orientation of the building, but also by having the parking in the rear also narrows down the lots a little bit more. And so you encounter and have more homes on a lot, which makes it more visually interesting as you walk along the neighborhood.
Like this used to be the dominant, right? This used to be the dominant style of development. Down in Capitol Hill, this is how it all is. We moved away from that. You brought up the text, I don't know why. Ours?
Yeah.
Like this is, yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so I think you see it is cars, right? So if you look at maybe the core neighborhoods that were maybe established earlier on in kind of 1940 or 50s or so, like it starts out with single garages, right? There's not many 2-car, 3-car garages, and further north you have more of that. So yeah, it's definitely the car culture that picked up in the 1900s that changed the development cycle. Yeah. And so, yeah, these kind of photo examples are showing you, again, of R1 zoning, right? But depending on where R1 zoning is located, we could better contextualize the standards so that in our newer kind of northern neighborhoods where we are anticipating greenfield development, we're pushing for the development options that encourage garage orientation that's in the rear. Maybe if the alleys do exist, requiring them to be loaded from the street, from the alley. And so really just making sure that our urban design goals from the comm plan are being better advanced through these development options, while allowing the flexibility that to reflect some of the current conditions that exist as well. And so I won't go through all of these. I just went through a brief example of how they're being used, particularly for single-family R1 zoning for the residential development options. But these development options are included for both our mixed use and commercial and industrial. So for mixed use and commercial, I think really some of the distinction that could be made is the scale of the block size. So for mixed-use neighborhoods that they're intended to be smaller in nature, more pedestrian-oriented, so they could be smaller blocks versus mixed-use regional where we'll have commercial and developments that are larger, which would require larger block sizes as well. And similar to industrial, it's really accounting for the different impacts depending on where the industrial use is located within the city. So for example, forgetting the name of the character here, but for the Northern Business District, where it is a lot of businesses that are more directly adjacent to residential, we might require greater setbacks for that particular use versus if they were maybe located further north where there isn't a lot of residential today, and we are able to be more careful in terms of how those uses are sited in the future.
So mixed use would be like side by side that we're talking about, not like commercial below, residential above, or either, or.
Yeah, I think it's just acknowledging the horizontal mix of uses that could occur. Yeah. Yep, next slide, please. And so getting down to the next level of detail with the zoning districts about really thinking about development and the uses at a block scale, it really is intended to establish the desired form and scale and the use of the development. And so that's talking about the zone districts will outline what are the allowable building forms, which I'll address next, the land uses that are most appropriate, and also the density requirements for each of the zoning. And so as an example, in terms of how we are creating alignment and better advancing the comp plan, these are just a couple examples of how we've refined and added to the zone district lineup today to better reflect the character areas. As I mentioned before, the South Platte District was really focused on preservation of open space, and I believe today we don't have a formal open space zone district that could be applied in the future to preserve open space opportunities. So that's one new zone districts that we have in place. And again, the second example is the E470 Expressway corridor. So that's an area along E470 where residential, employment, light industrial, and manufacturing could all coexist together. So that ended up creating what we're calling the Corridor Campus Zone District for that area. And then moving on, again, just kind of further on the zoning districts. So the idea is that we would have these broader development options and that we would list off the different zoning districts that are tied within each development option. And so there will be some overlap again from the R1 example, and there would be some other zone districts that maybe only be appropriate for one development option versus all three. And again, getting to the last bit of detail is the building form. And so again, we just talked about the neighborhood scale, the district scale, and now at the lot size, at the lot scale here, we are. It's not something that's currently used in our land development code, and it's a new concept that we're introducing. But by creating new building forms, we can better tailor our setback, building height, and other key form and bulk standards that are in our current code today to, again, better contextualize the type of buildings that we want to see in our community and that's called for in the comprehensive plan. So an example of that, again, just to stick with our residential zoning, is our residential zoning lineup. So right now we have R1, which is really just single family detached zoning, R2, which is our kind of two family or duplex zoning. But what building forms allow us to do is create more tailored standards for each zone district, depending on the actual building we would want to encourage on the lot. So one example here is maybe if you look at R2, there's a distinction about duplex being a side-by-side unit and duplex being able to be stacked on top of each other. And so what that allows us to do is to have more flexibility in the minimum lot requirement so that if we're having a duplex, you could still have a duplex on a fairly maybe narrow 40-foot lot that's stacked on top of each other versus if they're side-by-side, it would require a larger lot width. So we're trying to be more creative with our building form standards to actually allow for the type of housing products that are out there and that we want to encourage more of in our city. And so similar to R3, we don't currently today have a multiplex building form, which is basically a kind of appearance of a large single-family home, but it houses potentially 3 to 4 units within them. So it's really, again, just trying to be more creative about the different buildings we want to encourage and housing we want to encourage, and allow or better providing more flexibility in our development standards to allow for them. So again, these are kind of the illustrations that are tied to the specific standards. And I do want to point out that I think the flexibility in our new code is really key. And the lack of flexibility is really the primary reason why we have a lot of the PUD zonings out in the northern communities we have today. So, for example, I believe the R1 zoning in our current code, the minimum lot width is about 60 feet. And primarily the lots, I believe, in the northern neighborhoods when I was kind of testing and looking at them is 40 and 50 feet, right? And so a lack of flexibility in our land development code is the reason why, a lot of the developers and builders out there are looking for different a type of standards just to fit their development. And so allowing these newer building forms with more flexible standards allow for different variations that we want to see more of and that our comp plan calls for. And this is just an example, photo example and screenshot of the working table and working graphics that we have. And I believe that's it. I just have really next step slides after that. But again, this was just an opportunity to just kind of directly kind of give you the background information that's hopefully helpful as you review the materials in the future.
So on this next step slide, you'll notice we're getting ready to do the April 14th joint Planning Commission and City Council study session. So that should be in your calendars. And then May is when we'll have the public review draft available. May through July is when we'll be doing public engagement. June 3rd, you all said you wanted to do a public open house on the LDC, and so that's slated for June 3rd. June 9th is another joint study session date with council. And then we anticipate at your August Planning Commission meeting that you'd have the public hearing on the Land Development Code, which would then go to public hearing by City Council in September. Any comments on this calendar date or any questions for Sung on the building forums?
I just have one just general question. Unrelated, but to the transportation plan, because this just got me ruminating, thinking in the back of my head relative to Commissioner Schechter's point. The question Eddie was asking is, what's the timing of that relative to the LDC? And where I guess this is kind of
Can you pull up the webpage for the transportation?
it's a loaded question, but I was wondering if there's any review of engineering standards relative to zone districts and different housing types to help force traffic constraints and things of that sort.
So the engineering construction specs are being worked on. I don't think they'll be ready to adopt at the same time as the LDC, but that would be the goal. The transportation master plan is more of a broad brush,
Sure.
long-range plan for how we're gonna handle transportation in the city.
But is there any
So it's
thought
not
of,
gonna have street cross-sections or
sure,
that kind of
but
detail.
is there any discussion of bridging the street cross sections relative to districts within the city? We're looking at more narrow, where you're trying to do more dense housing, denser lots, having narrower street sections to help slow traffic.
Yeah.
things of that sort.
And I think that's a great comment and feedback and something we would need to think about in terms of updates to the engineering standards. And that's one of the primary reasons why we're kind of excited about the development options is that now it's not just, zoning, but we're actually talking about placemaking through the development options so that if we wanted to treat potentially an arterial or collector road differently from how we treat the central neighborhoods or maybe the residential village classification we have the ability to do so to reflect the land uses, the mix of uses, and the intensity of the development that we're accommodating, and making sure that the actual width of the street or how they function kind of reflects the character we want to build on. So that's a great comment and feedback that we've been discussing.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we have a date?
I don't see anything
Okay.
on their website right now.
We were just checking the transportation plan webpage, and we don't see a date for when it's anticipated to be adopted.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I have a question as well. With the public open house with Planning Commission, what would that look like? And I think you said that was for the LDC, or was that going to be an open house with the public, sort of a introduction to the Planning Commission?
I think the latter.
I thought that's what it was, but then I thought I heard you say with the, referencing LDC.
Right, it's the public open house on the Land Development Code that the Planning Commission wanted to host.
Is that what you intended when you were talking about?
No, so I think when I brought up that point was to have an open house for the community to come tell us how they think we're doing, to give feedback to us.
So I think that was something you brought up last meeting, if I remember correctly, from the book that you've been reading.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that we've scheduled that yet.
Okay.
But I think this open house is something that we put on the books a while ago.
Okay.
For the purposes of the LDC.
Perfect.
Good, so they're separate. That was my confusion.
Planning to have to
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification.
repurpose that one, so that's fine too.
Let's talk about it
Okay.
offline. Anything else?
I don't believe so. Bunch of shaking heads, so it looks like no.
You know what, I'm just wondering about the study session on the 14th. Like, has an agenda been worked out for that yet, or like what the topics are? I just personally I like to
Yes.
prepare, read up on it.
Yeah, we have a staff report and a PowerPoint presentation. They're being finalized right now.
Okay,
And so as soon as it's ready for the council packet, we'll be able to share that with you.
great, thanks.
Yeah,
And when is the draft LDC supposed to be available?
in May.
In May. Thank you.
Do you have anything else for tonight?
I don't believe so.
Okay. We can adjourn.